Hello, Law Geeks. Welcome to Credence Law Learning. This video is being presented for the educational purpose. Today, we are going to discuss the analysis of human rights syllabus along with its sections, questions unit wise. It's like a syllabus analysis with the question series unit wise. Before we get into the syllabus and the question papers, like the past papers, the expected questions from each unit, let us first understand the quotation given by Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela says, to deny people their human rights is like to challenge their very existence. Denying a person his or her human right is like taking away the very humanity, taking away the very human existence. It's like to challenge their very humanity. And now, speaking of the unit, first unit is jurisprudence of the human rights. In the first unit, we'll be discussing the introduction to what is human right. Speaking of what is human rights are those fundamental natural rights which are inalienable in nature. These are the rights which are not transferable in nature. Now, every person, irrespective of the nationality, race, religion, gender, possesses these rights just because he's a human. We all possesses this right, irrespective of our gender, irrespective of our nationality. We do possess this because of the virtue of being human. And uh, 10th December is celebrated as the International Human Rights Day. And then there's the definition part of the human rights. Speaking of the definition, we have the definition given under Section 2, subsection D of the Protection of Human Rights Act, wherein it emphasizes that human rights are those rights which are related to life, liberty, equality, and dignity of individual. These are the rights which have been guaranteed by the Constitution itself. The country's Constitution guarantees this, and this has also been embodied. This has also been inserted in the international covenant, and these are enforceable in nature. These can be enforced. The human rights can be enforced by the courts in India. That is the introduction part and the definition part. Speaking of its origin, in the origin, we will be discussing what was the revolutionary periods. Like we had Babylonian. After Babylonian, we'll study Roman era, French Revolution, American Revolution. Coming to the Indian evolution of the human rights, we have Vedas, Dharma, concept of Dharma, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Samaveda, Tharvana Veda. And then we have the concept of Dharma, where it emphasizes that a person's duty is to respect the rights. These are all the historical background. We will discuss all this in the regular sessions. Speaking of the theories to the human rights, before theories to the human rights, there is also one important concept from the first unit, that is types of human rights. Speaking of types of human rights, there are three generations of human rights. Human rights of first generation, second generation, and the third generation. First generation is civil and political rights. Second generation is economic, social, and cultural right. And the third generation, it is about the collective rights. Third generation is the collective rights. And then coming to the theories to the natural human rights, theories to the human rights, we have certain theories emphasized here. One is we have natural law theory. Natural law theory is God-given right reason. The law is something which is given by the God himself. A person knows what is right and what is wrong by virtue of his reasoning, what by his capacity to know what is right and what is wrong. That is natural law. And then we have historical theory, positivism theory, Marxist theory, theory based on justice, theory of social utility, dignity, equality, and idealistic theory of rights. This is about the first unit. This is the first unit syllabus analysis. Then the questions that we can expect from the first unit, one is the definition to the term human rights. What is the developmental phases of the human rights, be it in the national level and international level? We are supposed to cover both national and international level. That we will cover it in the regular sessions. And then there is theories of human rights, kinds of human rights, which is first generation, second generation, and a third generation. And one theory can be asked as a short question: natural law theory, then theory based on equality, theory of historical theory, then we have the social utility theory, theory based on justice, and the sources to the human rights. Sources to the human rights. So now the question is, what are the sources to human rights? Custom, treaties, international bills of rights, judicial decision, official decisions. These are all the sources to the human rights. This is the analysis of the first unit with its expected questions. Moving towards the second unit. In the second unit, it is about three things. One, we do have here is Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We call it UDHR. Speaking of what is UDHR, UDHR is nothing but Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This document contains 30 fundamental rights and the freedoms. It contains 30 fundamental rights and the freedoms, which is given to all the people regardless of the background. And 30 articles, and then we have few articles: right to equality, adequate living standard, education, cultural life of community, and then there is interdependency, universality, non-discrimination. All these are the principles of the UDHR, that is Universal Declaration of the Human Rights. There's this Universal Declaration, and then comes the next two important covenants. These are also called as bills of human rights. Speaking of bills of human rights, International Bill of Human Rights. One is UDHR. Second one we have is International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. This International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights again have got the preamble, then general provisions, rights in emergency, then enforcement mechanism, saving clause, and then we have this concept of economic, social, and cultural right. Like that is also a covenant, which we will be discussing all this in the regular session with its easy tricks to remember. And then the expected questions from the second unit is, we do have this UN Charter. They can also ask like a sentence. They can ask like a sentence how UN Charter is, concerning with the human rights. What are the human charters? How it is trying to protect the human rights. Then covenants will have to discuss in detail. We'll have to write as it is when it comes to the covenant. And then this UN Commission of the Human Rights. And then there is this Human Rights Council, UN Charter and Human Rights, and then High Commission. The Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. These two covenants are very important, and UDHR, though the most important, it is most expected, UDHR. So all this in detail with easy tricks to remember we'll discuss in the regular sessions. And this is just a quick information about the online classes available. If you're looking for handwritten notes, classes, and guidance, you can contact the number given. So you by enrolling, you would be getting the quality learning, and you will get the proper guidance and then regular sessions and check on the students' preparation. You can just contact to our team on the given number 7019560214. You can contact to our team. Our team will get back to you. If you have any queries, any special request, you can drop us a mail, or you can directly contact our mail on contact our team on a given number. Then coming to the third unit. In the third unit, it's all about the regional protection of human rights. Speaking of the regional protection of human rights, first we have here the first regional protection, that is European system. Under the European, we'll be discussing in detail about European Convention on Human Rights. It is called as ECHR. In short, we call it ECHR, Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. Like the European Convention for the Protection of the Human Rights and the Fundamental Freedoms. This was something which was signed in Rome, and then there are state parties of Europe. There is also a Council of Europe, and after this, we'll be discussing in detail about the Inter-American Council, Inter-American system. How Inter-American system is, how in America they're following the human rights. The convention at the American level, that is America. So this convention is also known as Pact of San Jose de Costa Rica. This is also called as Pact of San Jose de Costa Rica. It is where we have the it is to consolidate a system of personal liberty and the social justice based on the respect of essential rights of the man. And then there are two things under the Inter-American. One is Inter-American Commission of Human Rights and Inter-American Codes of Human Rights. And then we have the last regional protection, this thing, that is African. Speaking of the African Charter, African Charter on the Human Rights and the People's Right, also known as Banjul's Charter. Banjul Charter. This was adopted in the year 1981, and these are the three original protection of human rights. We are studying from three regions: European region, Inter-American, and African. Then, speaking of the expected questions from the third unit, we have these rights and freedoms of European Convention, European Commission, Inter-American Human Rights, how the rights have been enshrined in the American Convention, and how the implementation machinery is implemented. And then there is the African Charter. This is about the third unit. Speaking of the fourth unit, two things to be dealt. First thing that we are going to deal in the fourth unit is, one is how fundamental human rights and constitution are correlated. How the Indian constitution, the very base to the laws in India, Indian constitution, we all know fundamental basic law of the country is the constitution of India. Here we are going to speak about how Indian constitution and human rights are connected. How the what do you call Indian constitution is trying to protect. We have fundamental rights given under Part 3 of the Indian Constitution, where we have right to equality, freedom, exploitation, freedom of religion, educational rights, constitutional remedies. This is also a part of human rights. And then there is something called, International Bill of Human Rights and the Constitution. What are the similar articles of Indian Constitution and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Right and International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Right, and also the Constitution. Will UDHR will be discussing in detail in a regular session with easy tricks to remember the articles, because it's more of articles. And then there is the very important, that is, in India, we have the law passed by the Parliament, that is the Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993. Here in the chapter 2, we have National Human Rights Commission, which is important. It is given in chapter 2 of the Act from Article 3 to 11. Then we have powers of the Commission, which is given in chapter 3 from Article 12 to 16. And then comes the State Human Rights Commission. State Human Rights Commission is given under Chapter 5 of the Protection of Human Rights Act of 1993, wherein it consists of article sections from 21 to 29. And then we have the human rights codes dealt under 30 and 31 of the Protection of Human Rights Act. And then the expected questions from this is, one, though we can expect a question how the fundamental rights have been guaranteed under Indian Constitution, and about sometimes they'll ask you a detailed discussion of the Protection of Human Rights Act. Then in that case, we are supposed to keep the analysis of the whole act, that is the Protection of Human Rights Act. And then we do have this concept of commission, national levels commission, state level commission. What is the role of the courts? Role of the court, in the sense, here we are going to deal with the case studies. Then comes the last unit. Speaking of the last unit, in the last unit, it's about human rights and vulnerable groups. In the vulnerable groups, we do have the rights of the women. Speaking of the rights of the women, okay, in the last this thing we'll be discussing about the rights of the women, children, disabled, tribal, aged person, and also minorities. Speaking of this, the child, women, coming to the women, this thing, we do have this convention, the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW. We call it in short CEDAW, CEDAW, that is Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, is what we are going to discuss in detail in the regular session. And we'll also be dealing what are the conventions that we have in the international level to protect the children, disabled, tribal, aged, minorities. And the questions that we can expect is, the conventions, how the children rights have been protected, how the women's right have been protected, what is the status of the stateless person. There is a convention for the stateless persons, and then we have National Commission for Minorities, Age, Disabled, Tribal. We'll be discussing in detail all this in the regular sessions with its articles, and then just stay tuned to get updates about the lectures. And if you have any special request, you can contact to the number given. All the best for your upcoming semester. Do well, prepare well, and give importance to the books, textbook prescribed by the university. All right. See you all in the next um, lecture. See you all.